AI regulation may not sound like the most exciting topic in the world, but if you're developing AI tools, you need to pay attention because regulation is surely coming. My experience in the regulatory world of financial services tells me that when important new technologies are developed, like RPA, there is a process that inevitably follows. Phase 1. Society reviews and debates the scary new technology. It gets noisy in the media. There are people who are desperately frightened and people who are tingling with excitement. And this leads to phase 2, where politicians figure out that there may be votes in this topic and that society is talking about it. This is exactly what is beginning to happen now in AI. There are currently 84 bills making their way through state legislatures in the US. At the federal level, last week, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made a bit of a splash by announcing that he'd been hawking some kind of AI regulatory framework around Senate for a few months. Now, he's not the first, and he probably won't be the last politician to do that. But in stage 2, politicians are trying to balance the needs of business to innovate and develop new models with the needs of society to be protected against risky or negative outcomes. It's a tricky balance. Europe leans towards protections for society. The US tends to lean more towards freedom for business. Stage 2 can be long and it can be protracted. And it's a negotiation, except that with the speed of progress for AI, long and protracted may not be an option for us. In phase 3, once the law has been drafted and enacted, it's often the case it is actually difficult to implement. Brand new law, like for example in a new area of technology, is often too high level and generic in language to be easily used as written in a complex business environment. So the politicians will delegate the responsibility for developing detailed rules to another agency. At federal level right now, there's a bunch of them fighting for exactly this position. But it may well turn out that different agencies end up regulating AI slightly differently in different sectors of the economy. These agencies take the law and draw up more detailed rules, covering specifically how the AI regulations need to be applied. And that work is often done in partnership with industry. Now, in phase 4, after all this work of writing detailed regulations, they may still give rise to yet more uncertainty about how they should be applied in business operations. And this is where outside counsel is often brought in with some legal advice, and then inside counsel. It's also where the consultants begin to jump in from an implementation perspective, advising and guiding on how to stay in business on the right side of the law. And of course, helping out in the practical implementation to change processes, systems, and organizations. Regulators almost always want to see reports so that the companies that they're regulating know that they are being reported on. So there's a process to gather data and create the reports on an accurate, complete, and timely basis that has to be built. And then there's a question of what are regulators going to test against if they want to see that the reports represent what's really going on. They're going to come in and do site checks. All of this, you can be certain, is going to start to take place in AI once regulations are in place over the next few years. But let's step back to Senator Schumer's press release about his proposed regulatory framework. It proposes 3 types of guardrails and a general test that AI does no harm to society. Now, one of those guardrails, I think, will prove particularly problematic for business because it's effectively going to require some kind of I call it an inspection hatch to be built into AI black boxes to understand what's going on. Why is the law likely to end up requiring inspection hatches? Well, let me give you an example. When I wrote this article, I asked Google and Bing to find the text of Senator Schumer's proposed regulatory framework. They both produced his press release from April the 13th, but nothing much else. But when I asked a well-known generative AI the same question, it produced a beautifully written entire draft bill called the Artificial Intelligence Policy Act of 2023, which is awesome, except that this bill bears no resemblance to Senator Schumer's press release. And a search of the US congressional database reveals no such bill, nor is there a bill at state level. So it begins to look awfully like my generative AI friend dreamed up this bill, which does not really exist in the real world. How did this happen? What was going on in the AI model? Why was there no health warning on the AI output? To answer these questions, we'll need that inspection hatch to look into the black box. If you want a little bit more depth on this story, read my article. And have a great week.